Welcome to Alternative Dog Moms Podcast. I'm Kimberly Gauthier, the creator of Keep the Tail Wagging. For the past 9 years, I've been blogging about raw feeding, pet wellness, and life as a crazy dog mom. I've seen massive improvements in my dog's health since I started raising my dogs naturally, and I'm passionate about sharing my experience to help other pet parents.
I'm Erin Scott. For the past 9 years, I've been researching and learning everything I can about healing cancer, allergies, autoimmune, and mystery illnesses in both my dogs and myself. And I can't wait to share with you everything I've learned on this journey. As the Alternative Dog Moms, we're bringing you all the latest dog health news that we're following and sharing the tips, tricks, and resources we learn along the way. Now, let's get started. Hello, Kimberly.
Hello, Erin.
So I just gave Neno dinner, and it was a rabbit frame.
Well done.
So I have changed up some of what I'm doing with feeding my dogs after we talked to Dr. Lonsdale last week.
Nice. Very well. So did you feed him? Or were you just in the room when he was being fed?
So I did feed him this. However, there are other parts that Tim will be feeding, and have also moved the feeding to the yard because we didn't want that on the kitchen floor or anything.
So yeah, I feed my dogs from a raised dog dish that's on a mat. And what's funny is the mat, it's a regular like mat that you would put in front of a door, but just smaller. But I flipped it upside down, so it's just the rubber part. Mm-hmm. And that's what I feed the dogs from. And if it's something big, where they're not going to want to stand at their bowl, like they're going to want to lay down. And if it's raw, then they eat it outside on a nice day. But then the dried stuff, I scored 51 rabbit heads this
I
year.
saw.
And it was this weekend. This weekend was a great weekend for me. I did that, and I scored a bunch of lamb organs from a friend who was like, hey, do you want these? And I'm like, hell yeah. And so I will be learning how to clean a gallbladder and get the bile out and clean it up and see if what I can do. I'll be wearing gloves.
I think that's a better you than me thing. I don't think I'm at that stage yet. I'll throw a hunk of something down though.
I've already watched videos on YouTube. Apparently it is a delicacy in some cultures. Bile soup. Yeah, that's my face too. I will not be making bile soup for my dogs or myself, but I am going to give that a try. But right now everything's in the freezer, and I put the rabbit heads are dried. So I put them into a big storage container, and they're stored. And because I still have plenty of rabbit heads from Real Dog Box, I'm going to go through those first. But what's cool is I score them because it was a local pet store that offered them to me for free, because she's like, they're all just ugly. So we kept I guess they go through and they get the pretty ones because those are the ones people will buy. And they're like, you can have these. And I was they look fine to me, but hey, I'm not complaining at all. But I do think it's funny because I don't know if you've heard of that business. I don't know if it's called Ugly Produce or something.
Yes, that's what I was just thinking.
And I'm just sitting here like, I'll take it. I don't care what it looks like. But apparently it is a huge deal where, aesthetics are important to people. My dogs don't care.
Exactly. But I definitely think that interview we did with talking to Dr. Tom, that's one of the things that's made a huge impact on me of how I'm going to feed my dogs. And I'm still going to do the commercial raw, but mm-hmm. I'm going to be more intentional about what I'm rotating in and when and what and why, and making sure I'm doing more raw meaty bones, because that's not something I was always particularly paying attention to. So
yeah, I used to, but I sort of got out of the habit of it. It's like, first it was, Scout, and I got kind of off track with Scout, and then losing Scout, I got kind of off track as I'm readjusting, and then adding a puppy to the house. Even though there are videos of puppies eating raw meaty bones, I'm of the belief that I want your adult teeth to come in and then you can have bones. Even though raw meaty bones are, softer, but I wanted to wait until her adult teeth came in. And once that happened, then I wanted to make sure that she ate them. And we were both comfortable with them. And so I've been giving them like duck feet and chicken feet and, chews from Real Dog Box, but nothing intentional until we spoke to Dr. Lonsdale. And oh, wow, it's made my life so much easier because my morning light meal, I don't know why I did air quotes because it actually is a light meal. Now it was like, because I would do kefir or raw goat's milk or just a little bit of raw, but now I do like raw meaty bones and bone broth or something like. So this morning, everyone had a rabbit head for their morning meal, and then they haven't eaten dinner yet because I'm running late today.
Yeah, definitely made an impact on me, and some of the comments that we've been getting, it sounds like it's made an impact on other people too.
Yeah, I've seen comments of people who a lot of comments of people who agree with him and are like, yeah, that's how I feed my dogs. One person said something about, it's just human nature to make things more complicated than it needs to be. I did get a couple of comments from people who were offended by his comment about Ian Billinghurst. And it's funny because I didn't take offense to it. I look at it as two colleagues that disagree vehemently on a topic. And, it's not like he, at least not that I remember, called him a name, a derogatory name. That was his thoughts. And it made me think about the fact that it's interesting to me that when you disagree with someone, people take it so negatively and have such a knee-jerk reaction to, oh my gosh, I can't believe you just said that. And it's in their eyes, they look at it as drama and whereas like, no, why can't we talk about this? This is my viewpoint. I mean, there are so many people in the raw feeding community that I vehemently disagree with because I think that they are in it for the money, that I think they're in it for clout and attention. I think that the things that they post on social media are manipulative. I feel that they are just as bad as Purina and Blue Buffalo and the brands we accuse of spreading misinformation. I think they're equally as bad because they post things to make people feel bad if they're feeding kibble, because they're constantly posting about how horrible kibble is, or they're constantly referencing studies where they're misinterpreting the studies or cherry picking information out of the study to prove a point and counting on the fact that their followers aren't going to go and read the study. They're just going to take their word for it. And if anyone does go and read the study and it's like, that's not what it says, man, the pile-on is insane. So I think that there is very much a my way or the highway mentality with some people, where if someone decides to do something differently, they become very, again, a pile-on, they become very vicious. I've heard from people who've left groups because people who I do respect their knowledge and the intelligence that they have, but how they treat people is, very aggressively, or it comes across very aggressively. But I guess the reason why I'm not naming names is because it's just not worth the drama that will come. But maybe when I'm 75 years old and if I'm still doing this, I'll call everybody out and just be like, yeah, this person. But, I do find it interesting because, I think it's worth the discussion. And I think I'm disappointed that people, like one person, I think they said something about how the episode, let me find their quote because I was just like really surprised. Yeah, they found the episode extremely distasteful. And I was just like, that was like an hour-long episode. You're telling me that it was, like, what?
One sentence at the beginning.
One sentence in an hour, like, basically less than 30 seconds, but turned you off of an hour of great information. And, this person is entitled to like and dislike whomever he wants, just as all of us are. I mean, and if anything, I find it refreshing when people can just say, to put it out there. And I think that were it not for the drama of social media, I think we would probably take it as, oh yeah, they have a history. I mean, because I've always known that they had a history. So it just did not faze me at all. Whereas maybe other people don't know. I mean, I think it's the same as, I mean, let's just dive back into my history. When I announced that I was going to review Dr. M's video about Dr. Becker, and people misunderstood and thought I was attacking Dr. Becker. And boy, the reaction was strong and pretty darn aggressive and it went on for like probably a month where I was getting nasty messages from people. And even though I showed like, look at guys, this is what I'm doing. People, instead of them, like some people said, oh yeah, I misunderstood. But there were a few people that were like, yeah, so I misunderstood and I only skimmed what you had to say, but I still think you're wrong. And I'm still mad at you. And so, but I think people get so passionate about the people they respect. And if someone says something negative about someone that they respect, they take it as an attack on them. I think the same thing of if I were to start putting out content about how poisonous kibble is and how horrible kibble is, eventually I'll start rubbing people who feed kibble the wrong way because it's like, hey, I don't have a choice. And, and they start feeling like you're attacking me. You're telling me that I'm not doing a good job. And so I wonder how much of that, luckily I only got 2 comments from people that were rubbed the wrong way. One person that I read who found it distasteful. The other person just was like, I wish he wouldn't have said it. But she's like, I still thought the episode was good. But I just, hey, there's a lot of history in raw feeding and in this community. And I bet if we opened up everyone's history, we would find a lot of people that don't like each other. I mean, frankly, I'm friends with a few people and know their secrets. And I could tell you right now, Dr. Lonsdale and Dr. Billinghurst aren't the only ones that have a history. It's just that people don't talk about it. I mean, I think everyone sort of agreed that, we're going to just keep that on the down low and we'll just not talk to each other. But if people start looking at, some of the collaborations, they'll probably pick up on the fact that there are a few people who either never collaborate together or very rarely collaborate together. And there's a reason for it. So I would be honest and say that I would have judged this differently probably a few years ago. Now I judge it as someone coming from a generation and probably a culture where they just say what they have to say. I have a mother-in-law who is Dutch and family who are Dutch. And the Dutch folks have a tendency of just saying what's on their mind and not beating around the bush. The beating around the bush, being sensitive thing is an American thing. But in other countries, they kind of just say what they have to say. And they don't get all butthurt in their feelings about it. But Americans, we get teased for the fact that we get so offended so quickly. Especially, it's like, why are you getting offended on Dr. Billinghurst's behalf? Do you think he cares?
Right. And if you get Dr. Lonsdale's new book, the Pet Food Con book, he actually prints a lot of the history between him and Dr. Billinghurst in that book. So you can see where their beef is.
The balls. I mean, I would love to do something like that, but I would never do it. And by never, I mean, me at 52 would not do this. Maybe me at 72 would be all for it. But I could never do it because I would be worried about just opening up a Pandora's box.
Hey, quick question for you. Are you someone who wants to be fit, healthy, and happy? And what if I told you you could get your dream body by simply just listening to a podcast? I'm Josh.
And I'm KG, and we're the hosts of the Fit, Healthy, and Happy podcast.
Listen, we get it. Fitness isn't easy. Carbs, no carbs.
Just stop, okay? It doesn't have to be that complicated. And that's why we made this podcast. We get straight to the facts so you can become your best you.
So the way to check us out is click the link in the show notes or search Fit, Healthy, and Happy podcast on any of the major podcast platforms. We'll see you soon.
I mean, it's respectful, but it's just that you can kind of see where each one is coming from.
Yeah.
And, you know, each of their, I don't want to say motivation necessarily, but, you know, it's two different ways of going about something. And, you know, everybody's entitled to their own way.
Well, and I mean, what surprises me is that people are surprised.
Yeah.
Because when I think about 10 years ago, I mean, I'm sure that it's still happening today. I'm just not as dialed into the raw feeding community as I used to be. But I remember being members of groups where you could not mention certain people's names in that group. If you shared an article, like by dog, if you shared something from Dogs Naturally magazine, if you mentioned Rodney Habib, if you mentioned Karen Becker, if you mentioned, anything, like vegetables in their groups. If you mention feeding dogs vegetables other than just for fiber or weight loss, you would just all of a sudden you're out of the group. I mean, and sometimes they would explain it to you. A lot of times they wouldn't, they would just kick you out of the group. I asked once, where do eggs, raw goat's milk, and kefir fall in the diet? Like, how do people categorize it? Because some groups are like, nope, that's not species appropriate, where other groups are like, no, this is great for dogs. So how do you determine what's what? It was actually the author, the book is yellow and purple. I think it's Lou Olson.
Oh, I have that book.
Yeah, her group. I asked that question and was kicked out immediately. And so I sent an email or a message to the admin to say what happened. And she said that we removed you from the group because we are worried that you're going to start plagiarizing Lou Olson's work, because I checked out your profile and you're sharing content from like Dr. Peter DeBias and all these people. And I was just like, that's not plagiarizing, it's sharing. That's the whole thing with social media, is you share articles. I didn't copy and paste their article onto my website and then claim it as my own.
Right.
And they were just like, we just don't know. We don't know who you are. And we just feel like you asked that question to cause trouble. And I was just sort of like, and I kept wanting to be like, I don't understand. How am I supposed to learn? Today, if I can go back to talk to Kimberly from back then, I would have just said, let it go. But I wanted a damn explanation. And that was like, but I just kept getting, it was a joke where I was constantly being kicked out of raw feeding groups for asking questions. But that's how strict they were as far as, this is how we do things, you know, and do not question it. If you're coming here to learn how we do things, and not to question how we do things, not to challenge us, but to learn how we do it. And if you can't do that, then you don't need to be in this group. And today, 10 years into raw feeding, I actually can kind of understand that stance. Like, I don't want to keep arguing with you about this. This is what it is here. If you don't want to do it this way, that's fine. There's a gazillion other groups you can join. But this group, we feed asparagus on Thursdays, period. If you don't like it, get out. I can kind of understand it, but for people who are new to raw feeding, it's frustrating.
Yeah.
So that's why it's like, when he said Billinghurst's name, I was just like, I wonder how that's gonna.
Yeah, I debated on whether we should edit it out, quite frankly, but
like, how's that gonna go? But it's part of the history.
Yeah.
And I already knew about that history because
like, you've been doing this a long time.
I shouldn't say I thought everyone knew, but it just wasn't shocking to me because I knew that there was a history between the two of them. What I enjoyed about it was just sort of like the basics of raw feeding versus what we're doing today, where it's so commercialized. And, people offering meal formulation services, and
everybody's trying to sell you something. You know?
And people scaring people. I get comments I won't say daily, but like a few a week from people who are so afraid, so frustrated. Someone left a comment this weekend. She wants to start feeding her dogs raw. Every single time she's tried to feed her dogs raw, they won't eat the food.
I'm always surprised by that.
I've been so lucky, and I try not to.
Me too.
I try not to, like roll my eyes type of thing, especially with Rodrigo, because he has decided it's not that he's not going to eat raw. I just found I've always known. I started buying from a very affordable local farm, and Rodrigo has let me know I am not eating this. And so thankfully, I mean, I bought a ton of food, but it's almost all gone, and the other dogs don't have a problem eating it. So they are eating it. But it's frustrating with Rodrigo because he's not a picky eater, but if he decides he doesn't want something, he's not going to have it. And I also recently learned that reishi mushrooms have a bitter taste. So, and I know that he does not like reishi mushrooms in his food. And I have a feeling that one reason why he wouldn't eat it was because he started smelling to see if the reishi was in there. And he was just like, you know what, I'm just not going to eat this because it's gross.
Okay.
So, but that's just a guess. But that being said, she said that she found a recipe and she's following the recipe, and she was like, it's so easy. It's just meat and vegetables, red flag. And it's like, where did you get the recipe? Cause that's not, I feed my dogs a little differently, and I'd be really curious to learn where you got the recipe and learn more about why they just chose meat and vegetables, no bone, no organs, just meat and vegetables. And I think if I understand it correctly, she went to the pet store, found a raw food, looked at the ingredients, and that's what she took from the ingredients. So to like meat and then peas and all the, and thinking that was, I can make this at home. And so again, I no longer argue with people. I'm not going to say, yeah, you obviously read that wrong, but because I don't know, I didn't ask any more questions, but someone else did, which I'm so grateful, came in and said, yeah, you obviously got some bad information there because that is not right. But it goes to just the frustration that although the raw feeding community is growing so rapidly and is becoming so normalized, it's still very confusing and people still don't know what to do. And I know that there are Raw Feeding 101 has, courses in the boot camp. Feed Real Institute offers meal planning and meal prep workshops. You can work with a meal formulator. There's so many things out there, but for a person who has no idea what to do, has no idea that these services are even available, and they're brand new and they're just trying to feed their dog a healthy diet and their dog is not cooperating, it's too much. Yeah. And so yeah, it's a lot. So I really love the conversation of just going back to the basics. And so I know that I'm surprised actually that I haven't seen any, this isn't balanced and what about balance type of comments. I haven't seen any of that. So stay tuned when we have him on again and again and again.
Yes.
I think maybe those comments will start.
There's so much to talk about with him. I'm excited.
Me too.
I hope everybody gets his book and reads what he's up to. And it takes a lot of guts, balls, integrity, to put himself out there and make himself a target. And he's not trying to sell you anything other than potentially his book, but he's trying to make change for our animals and make change in the industry and shine a light on this and point out all of the ways in which people are being duped every single day for the purpose of making money.
Yeah. And it's I think that's the part that got me and made me really listen is the fact that there isn't for a low price of,
right.
$19.99.
But wait, there's more.
You too can learn how to feed raw. I mean, it's just, he's putting the information out there. The books are perfectly affordable. They're easy I finished Work Wonders.
Yeah. And that one's so tactile, full of information. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. He covers so many things. I mean, he even says in the book, which is don't feed garlic because it's toxic. And I'm just, as I'm listening, I'm like, I don't agree with that, and just keep on listening. And because they're just like, why do we, one, have to agree with every single thing that people say? And two, why do people have to speak in a way that takes into account each of our individual sensitivities? So going back to him calling out Billinghurst, and someone saying that, that they found the episode distasteful, it's just sort of like, of course, respect. Also, it's not about you. It's about feeding animals. And so I don't give a damn about his, that's not true. I'm curious as hell because, I love my reality TV. And I just ordered the next book because I can't wait to read those letters. But ultimately, it's about my dogs. And anyone who could say something that's going to help my dogs, I'm going to listen to them.
Absolutely. So I don't know if you remember a couple years ago, and by a couple, I mean like 15, there was a show on VH1 called Best Week Ever. And so you mentioned Feed Real and Real Dog Box, and I just kept thinking that they were having the best week ever last week.
I got my number 100 box.
Yes. I just got the thing that mine is shipping. So yeah, they just put out their 100th Real Dog box. So that's very exciting for them. Yes. They change it every month. 100 months is a long time.
Oh yeah. And it's so cool because everything is so generous. Because I actually paused my subscription because I have so much, and now I'm starting to go through again. I'm not going to keep bringing up Dr. Lonsdale. But because of that discussion, I'm going through the chews a lot faster because now that's more of a regular part of their meal. So once I got the email that the 100th was coming up, I was just like, oh, start it up again because I want to get the 100th box. And what I love is that there's actually salmon in it, not salmon skin. Salmon is in this one. So it's like really cool.
I love the meatballs. I don't know if you get the meatballs, but I added on the meatballs, and it's like this ginormous bag of meatballs, and with just having Neno right now, like they last a while.
Oh yeah, my Rodrigo can't eat the meatballs unless I cut them in half.
Oh,
so I have to hydrate them for 30 minutes in hot water, and then I have to cut them in half for him because it's just too much.
Oh, okay.
For his mouth. I don't know why. Everyone else can eat it just fine.
Neno has that ginormous head, so he doesn't know.
So he's just fine.
He's always like, I've been training my whole life for this moment.
Whereas Rodrigo is just sort of like, can I speak with the manager, please?
Exactly. He's a bit of a Karen.
A little bit. And sorry to everyone out there whose name is Karen.
Yeah. Which because my name's Erin, I usually get Karen or Ann, and I always want to be like, not Karen.
So that's cool. And then yes, the courses which are now qualified for continuing education. I was supposed to be starting it this month, but my day job is taking too much of my brain. So July, I'm taking Tuesdays off. I'm taking the time off before the 4th of July. And that's when I'm going to get started on the course. And I'm super excited.
Yeah, I sent the notice to my veterinarian because I wanted her to know that the next time she needs to do continuing education, that she can do it from Feed Real and get this whole nutrition course. And I assume everybody's familiar with the concept of continuing education because I work for lawyers. That's something that's always on my mind too, that I have to make sure there's things I can do, but I'm not required to do. But like some professions, especially medical, legal, they want you to stay up to date with things. And so they put this requirement for you to keep your license active that you have to have so many approved hours. So I went down this rabbit hole of, so RACE is, RACE is the acronym for the organization that you can get your veterinary continuing education from. So I went down this rabbit hole of like, well, what are the other courses that are out there? And especially on nutrition. Mm-hmm. And shockingly, or maybe not so shockingly, about half of them are prepared by Hills and Purina. And we can even put the link in the show notes if people want to look what's available in their state. And some of the courses charge a fee, and it could be like $25, $100. Like if you want to do acupuncture, I think that one was like $1,500. But a lot of the Hills and Purina ones are free, including one of them that talks about DCM and what to say to your clients who want to make raw or homemade diets.
Ooh.
Yeah. So I'm like, oh, okay. And I had just had a conversation with my friend Kate, who owns Clippers Canine Cafe in Ellicott City. Shout out to Kate. And she was saying how many customers have been coming in who have been feeding either grain-free or maybe raw diets, and their vets are on them, right? Like, and people want to change what they're doing. And she, they want Purina Pro Plan. And she's like, I don't carry any of that. Like, she's a boutique, store. Like, she doesn't carry Purina. And she's like, I don't know where all this is coming from. And I think it's coming from all these continuing education free classes put out by Hills and Purina. And I sent her the links of all this too.
Yeah, I'm looking at this, and there was 3 classes in Washington about raw feeding. 2 of them, which are free, are hosted by Fetch DVM 360, which I know has ties to kibble companies. One of them, commercial raw, is called Raw Epiphany. Commercial raw diets can be made safe, which is like, So commercial raw diets can be made safely, but they are not all created equally. This talk will cover raw food category growth, perceived benefit, a brief introduction of published research, and an overview of food safety and quality controls, including pathogen mitigation and nutritional adequacy. How to effectively evaluate a commercial raw diet will be discussed, as well as defining factors of an excellent commercial raw pet food company. Now, reading that blows my mind. What blows my mind even more is that, so I don't know if it just counts 30 minutes towards your credits, or if this is just a 30-minute course. But that's a lot of information to cover in 30 minutes. Because 30 minutes is sort of like, we've been talking for 30 minutes.
Right.
So we're done. Go out there and educate people about raw, please. Are you kidding? But I'm happy with what it sounds like, because DVM 360 is not a website that I would consider pro raw, and only because of basically the DCM. They, I linked to a lot of their articles on DCM back in the day, and so we'll see.
Now, I will say that there was a course from CIVT, I think it's like College of Integrative Veterinarians or something like that. And they are a reputable organization, but their course also, cost more than the free ones from, the kibble manufacturers.
We have one of those, and it says, I think it says price not reported.
Yeah.
It's an hour long.
Yeah, that one was available in Maryland too. And and apparently each state has different ones that are available. So like I had looked up Maryland and got, I think, more than what you had.
Yeah, I think I have 4. I have 4 of them. No, I have other ones, but these aren't specifically raw ones.
Oh, okay. Yeah, I think I just looked up nutrition, and there was a few pages of that.
Oh, here it is. Now I see. Hills Pet Nutrition. Navigating the pet food aisle, how to evaluate any diet anywhere, by Hills Pet Nutrition. Food Trials and Tribulations, Diets and Dermatology, by Hills Pet Nutrition. So yeah, this is interesting.
Yeah, it was just my own little personal rabbit hole of like, where is all this information coming from? And much like we're saying, and much like Dr. Lonsdale's book, it's coming from these kibble manufacturers, is what our vets are learning.
Yeah. Yeah.
Unless they go out of their way to try to learn something different.
Feeding Dogs with Cancer, by Hills Pet Nutrition. So yeah, this is pretty cool. So it'll be interesting to see if, Feed Real adds more and more types of courses, because I think that it would be amazing just to, I found one from Purina. New research to inform feeding recommendations for senior horses. Anyway, I'm going to go down that rabbit hole and completely ignore you. Yes, and that's addicting. But yeah, it's just, I think it's really kind of just amazing what Ruby and Turk have managed to do with Real Dog Box from the start
Yeah.
till today. I mean, it's funny because I think of them, Coco Therapy, Two Crazy Cat Ladies, Scott of Raw Feeding 101. They just sort of keep their nose to the grind and keep going. And you never really hear anything about them until they come out with something. And it's just like, there's something to be said for just focusing on the dogs and leaving the rest to handle itself.
So yeah, the other big news was that Susan Thixton put out her first ever treat list, which included Real Dog Box, which was very exciting. Yes, and many of the other, like you said, Coco Therapy. I encourage everybody to go buy the list, give Susan the donation to continue doing the work that she's doing. But yeah, that was very exciting to see.
It's kind of cool just to see, again, how far they've come, what they've accomplished.
But I'll make sure we have a link in the show notes for anybody who wants to get the Susan Thixton approved treat list.
Yeah. So yeah, and I'm looking at the comments, and all of the comments are positive. So that's really great. And that's really great. I love that there are people who still promote Pet Fooled. Go watch Pet Fooled. I just saw one of those comments. I love that documentary is still making an impact on people.
Yeah, I mean, a lot of people, that was like their first exposure to some of this. Yeah.
Yeah. And I bet you what's so funny about it is I find it interesting that, we're all here because we love animals, but one person's success or shining the light on one person can aggravate so many other people. So when Pet Fooled came out, because like Dr. Becker was featured in it, her critics were like, this is ridiculous. And, this is, and they're just going to completely throw out the film, because I saw some of that. And I was just sort of like, oh gosh, you guys, come on. It was a really well done documentary from someone who doesn't have a pet, is not working in the pet industry, really had no reason to mislead anyone, and went into this just out of curiosity and wanting to learn.
Right.
And so I just thought, Cole Harrington was the absolute best person to do that documentary, because no one can claim that he was being paid by anyone.
Right.
He wasn't working for a raw food company. He wasn't working for a kibble company. He wasn't part of the industry at all. And that was pretty cool.
Yeah, absolutely.
So, yeah. But speaking of truth about pet food, you sent me a link to her article, What If AFCO Nutrient Profiles Are Linked to DCM?
Yeah, that was fascinating. That was an interesting take on it. And as she points out, nobody's ever looked at it that way, investigated it that way.
I mean, and it's funny because I've never thought about like the idea that, because, if your dog is overweight, your cat is overweight, they'll say, oh, well, cut back on the food. But because so many animals or so many pets are overweight, and it's not just food, that's the reason. It's the food, but it's also lack of exercise. And if you're cutting back food, are you still feeding the same amount of treats? Have you cut back on treats as well? Have you upped the exercise? Because for me as a human, when I want to lose weight, it's not about the food. I mean, I basically dive back into intermittent fasting and really hold on to it. But I have to go and walk the dogs. I have to get on my elliptical. I have to burn some calories too. It's, I can't eat within a 5-hour period as I'm sitting on the sofa watching TV. Somehow it just doesn't work for me. So I'm curious to know, just sort of like the idea that you're cutting back food for an extended period of time, waiting for weight loss to happen, not realizing that over that period of time, you're building up on deficiencies in their system that could be linked to DCM. And whoa, I'm going to be following this one, because it would be interesting to see if anyone picks up on it, whether to dispute it or to say, that's a good point, let's look into this.
Yeah, because I was taking it as if if AFCO profiles are meant for a certain weight and you're supposed to feed, half a cup for your 30-pound dog, but your 30-pound dog is actually 40 pounds. So you start giving less than half a cup. Does that mean the dog isn't getting, enough nutrients for its size? And that was kind of how I was interpreting it. And yeah, I don't know that anybody's been looking into it in that way.
Yeah, it's just not something that I would have. I mean, again, it's not something that I've been concerned about until it became an issue where I'm glad that it was thrown onto my radar. And it's not that I'm worried about it now, but if I get a dog that may be prone to DCM, because I actually had a friend who had a Great Dane, fed raw, so naturally reared, never touched kibble in its life, still had an issue with DCM. And so it's just,
but they're more genetically prone, I think, right? Because there is certain breeds that are more like boxer, or, what are those little guys?
I don't know, but the fingers are really fascinating to me.
Is it the Cavalier King Charles or the Cocker Spaniel,
I think you're right.
One of those like spaniel-y kind of dogs? Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, and it's one of those things where it was interesting because what she did is she started adding a taurine supplement to her dog's diet, and that did help. But, it's still one of those things where I think the same thing with cancer, although I'm not going to spend all my time stressing about cancer, but it's important for me to understand about the fact that, this is what feeds cancer, et cetera, and so forth, so that maybe I'll have a better shot at avoiding that diagnosis. I mean, you're never going to be 100%, but, but yeah, Susan Thixton is so badass.
I know. Like she needs like a cape.
I know. Well, she does. Isn't that her logo? I thought her logo used to be her with the cape. I think it was. She's never been afraid to broach topics that other people didn't want to talk about. And I remember years ago when no hide shoes came out, and there was a question about the ingredients and if they truly were no hide. And there was also the Avengers with the euthanasia and the fact that they were calling it beef, but it was actually horses. And the dog that passed away, I actually met the person whose dog passed away from eating that food. But, she's broached those topics. And I remember seeing like the comments would be vicious underneath her post, as more information came out. And then she was actually proved that, she was right from the start. All of a sudden people are silent. And it's like, where are the apologies? Shouldn't you guys be coming back and saying, I am so sorry?
Oh, no.
But yeah, she's fearless.
So my mom sent me something interesting the other day, and I need to dig into it more. And it's about people cancer, but, because so many of our dogs eat beef too, right? That I was curious about it with animals. I had never heard of this before, but there was an article that she sent me that says as many as 37% of breast cancer cases may be attributable to exposure to bovine leukemia virus.
Oh, wow.
So I'll put a link for that in the show notes if anybody wants to check that out. But it says that viruses can trigger cancer by either turning on cancer genes or turning off cancer suppressing genes. And they can also contribute to tumor formation just by causing chronic inflammation. About 40 years ago, bovine leukemia virus was identified as a cancer-causing virus in cows, and at the time, only 1 in 10 U.S. dairy cows were infected, but now it's closer to 5 in 10.
50%.
And BLV has been detected in beef and dairy products in the U.S. marketplace, and about half of milk and meat samples turn up positive for the virus. And people are not only exposed to it, but actively infected with it. So anyway, I'll put a link to that in the show notes too, because that was something I wanted to dig into more. And, to me, it goes to the idea, right, of like getting things from local farms. But, I don't while I buy that meat for myself, only in the last several years, not like the whole first 35 years of my life. And then, with our animals too, like I have primarily bought commercial pet foods, and I want to look into this some more.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, it's funny because because of my dogs, I started really thinking about the meat that I buy for myself. And when it comes to steak, the only time I buy it is when it goes on sale, and it's only one brand, and it's grass fed. And because usually it's so expensive now.
Yeah.
But if it goes on sale, like in fact, a couple of weeks ago, I bought 2 of them, and it was just like, yay, look at it, it's on sale. And I had them in the fridge and I ate them. But it's, when I thankfully have friends who raise their own animals, and oftentimes they'll sell like, either half of a cow or half of a pig, or
Right.
they'll sell the part, like you can get this much bacon or this much blank. And so sometimes I will buy that from them, mostly for my dogs. But yeah, it's interesting because how much of this is due to, what they're injecting into the animals, what they're feeding the animals, what they're spraying on these properties.
And how, like, in factory farming situations, that they're too close of quarters, they're not allowed to be a cow.
Yeah. Yeah. And it's just, I'm not surprised that, you are what you eat. So,
Right. And you are what you eat eats.
Yes.
I think I said that right.
Yes, I think you did too. So yeah, it's kind of a bummer though. It's just like, it's a scary thing where I want to do better for my dogs, but I want to do better for myself. And it's so expensive to do these things. It's crazy how when I was a kid, going to McDonald's was a treat because it was cheaper to make food at home. It's like, I'll make you a burger at home. Whereas now going to McDonald's is the cheap option. Whereas, making the food at home somehow has become just an inconvenience. And whereas I just can't bring myself to now. I'm just very careful about what I eat and where I go to eat. And it's all because of, what I've seen with my dogs.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. Between that and having cancer, it just made me very, very much aware of these things. And I'm not saying I'm perfect all the time, but I'm certainly much more mindful about it now than ever.
Yeah. So what do you have planned for the week?
I think this is a late editing week. I basically plan my whole schedule around what podcasts need to be edited. But I have acupuncture this weekend, and I'm going to see The Cure.
Oh my gosh, are they still around?
Yeah, yeah.
Oh, look at that.
Yeah, I'm very excited. I've never seen them before. I've loved them since I was like 10 years old, and somehow I've never managed to see them before. So I'm very excited.
Oh, and you said you did an emotional code test with Neno. How did that go?
Oh, yes. So this is kind of woo-woo. Yeah, there's a practice, I'll call it, called the emotion code. And I don't know if you are familiar with people who use pendulums.
Yes.
And so this was very fascinating. There's a book. I'll put a link to the book in the show notes. And there's different practitioners, and you can do it for yourself. And actually, Tim had done it for himself a couple years ago. And it helps you kind of figure with a person, you can kind of go to them and say, well, these are issues in my life that I want to work on. And they have this kind of like chart system where they'll talk about how old you were when something happened, and they'll help you clear it. And they use this pendulum to help them identify where blockages are in your energy field. And so they're kind of like tuning into your energy and using the pendulum to help them. And like they have this kind of like chart system that they like read off on that tells them like by tuning into your energy where they're finding blockages that need to be cleared. And so we did this with Neno, and I was curious how it would work. And a lot of what was coming up for him, all we kind of know about his past is that he was pulled by animal control out of a bad situation when he was approximately 2 years old. Mm-hmm. And so all this stuff was coming up for him, like that he had been treated poorly and made to feel like he could never do anything right was one of the things that came up, or like that he will never be forgiven is like one of these, because they have these, that's like things that show up on the chart. And so like a lot of these things happen when he was like 7 months old and like 1 year old, and like something bad happened with a neighbor of where he lived when he was 2 years old. And then it talks about like a broadcast message that's like something that you're putting out in your energy field all the time, whether you know it or not. And for him, it's, you're trying to fight me.
Mm-hmm.
And so anybody that approaches him, he thinks is like trying to fight him. And that is exactly what we see in him. And she came up with that to us. We did not give her any information, about that. And she said in one that at this time he was not ready to let go of that. And I guess sometimes you can do different energy work to help clear that. But at this time, the pendulum was saying, no, he wasn't in a space to be able to let that go. And it's just interesting if you see him, like when the mailman comes up to the house or the Amazon guy, and he, our joke is always like Beavis and Butthead, like, are you threatening me? I mean, that his posture to anyone that comes up to him, approaches him, other than Tim and I, is as if he's being defensive, as if this, and so it was very interesting. So yeah, a lot of what she worked on was like clearing negative energies from when he was a young puppy, and bad things that had happened to him, and bad ways that he had been treated, and how that shows up with him. So we might try to do
that he found you.
I know, that's what she kept saying, is that, he's such a good guy. She's so happy, he's happy, but he still has all this stuff that he carries, in his energy field. And so we're going to do a couple more sessions, I think. But she's gonna, I guess, kind of like every week she does a pendulum to see like, is now a good time to do it again? And so like every week she lets us know. So she hasn't said, hasn't checked back in yet. Yeah. So it's an interesting thing. It's definitely kind of woo-woo and out there. Like I said, Tim had done it for himself a couple of years ago. And what was interesting with him is like that there was stuff going back like 7 generations that he was trying to clear. And he found that really interesting, particularly because my husband doesn't know a ton about his father's side of the family, and a lot of the stuff that was coming up was on his father's side. So it was very interesting for him to hear that. So if anybody wants to learn more, it's another woo-woo practice to check out for yourself, for your dogs. And it can be a helpful tool if you have that kind of energy, if you're into that energy thing.
It cracks me up because it's like, I love my dogs so much that even when they're bad, they're good. I mean, it's just like, I cannot imagine being annoyed. And I mean, I do honestly get annoyed with like my cat, because my cat will just start meowing and meowing for no reason. Well, obviously there's a reason, but he'll do it at an inopportune time. And, my dogs, a leaf blows by the window and everyone's barking. And it cracks me up because they're all looking in different directions while we're all going to just bark in solidarity. And it's just like, and then if I start shouting, it's me barking too. So it's like, oh my God, she's barking with us. So let's bark some more. And it's just like, why? Or, like the worst, not the worst, but one thing that just drives me bonkers is when I'm about to do something, I'm about to leave or about to feed the dogs, but Apollo decides to go swimming. Like the worst absolute time he decides to go swimming. And because now that we have Bella, and Bella follows him everywhere, she's not ready to swim, but she chases him around. And so she gets covered in mud and he's, wet. And I'm just looking at them like, well, I guess whatever I plan to do, I have to push off because I needed these guys to dry off. Then I need to dry off the rest. I need to rinse off paws. And it's just like, ugh. But, that's just part of, I don't hold a grudge about it. And, I just couldn't imagine, Bella has destroyed 3 pairs of slippers now. I think 3 pairs of slippers now. And what I learned from that is to stop leaving my slippers where she can get them.
Right.
I saw this on Instagram. It was an Instagram reel by a dog trainer who was talking about, this is what you do when your dog has an accident in the house. And he was like, absolutely nothing. You blame yourself because you weren't paying attention. And he just like goes into it. And he guys, and he was like, and don't rub your dog's nose in their feces. That's disgusting. And, and he goes, and he just, I was like, it was such a great message. And I was so excited and I shared it. And someone, comments, he's a bully. And I'm just sort of like, no, he's not, because a bully would not be advocating for the dog as passionately as he's doing it. Go look at his feed. He uses training tools. And I was just like, honey, you are barking up the wrong tree for that one. It's like, I am not into that camp of demonizing people. But I was in kind of a snarky mood that day. So I did go on to say a bully is a person who just goes around calling people names and attacking their character for no reason other than that they just disagree. And then that's what I love about Instagram is you can remove followers. So I removed her as a follower.
So I saw something that I just absolutely loved the other day.
Do tell me more.
From a dog trainer. And I'm trying to find it so that I can quote it like super accurately. But there's somebody who I know here in Baltimore who is a force-free, positive dog trainer. And she shared a photo of a dog that she's working with that is wearing a prong collar. See this pitbull guy? And she says, wait, what? I thought you were a force-free dog trainer. Why is this dog wearing a prong? And she says, because part of being force-free is being that way with humans as well. Right now, this is what this dog's mom needs to feel safe walking him. It's not something we recommend, and we'll work to find a solution to her behavioral concerns without the potential negative side effects that punitive methods can have. In our second session, we practiced putting on his brand new harness and feeling comfortable with that. But when she walked into our first session, she just needed understanding and respect, not judgment. By the end of that session, dog mom was walking him around on a loose leash and smiling and feeling hopeful for the first time in a long time. And that is what we consider success.
That is so amazing. Thank you so much for sharing that with me. That makes me like, oh my God, I'm ready for ear to ear. I love that because that's what it drives me crazy. Just this world. I mean, I've like reached a point where I have completely written off positive-based dog trainers. And not because as a community they're bad, but because they have bad actors, as do all communities. And those are the ones that are the loudest and the meanest, and they attack, and they are not interested in having a conversation. They just want to beat you over the head with their opinion and their thoughts. And if you don't bend to their will, then they start attacking your character. And I'm just sitting here like, I love my animals. I would never bring my dog to a person who treats me like that and is dismissive and rude towards me. And I totally understand that it comes from a place of loving animals so much and possibly seeing the worst situations. So I get where it comes from, but it doesn't help me and my dog. And what you just read is so beautifully done because it goes to like meeting people where they are.
Right.
Rather than expecting them to elevate to where you are immediately and punishing them.
So shout out to Amy at Oscar Winning Behavior for sharing that.
Let's put a link to her so people can, give her a follow because I would, I love that. That is exactly what it needs to be. I mean, my trainer, Dayton Cummings of Kilted Canine, one thing that he does is he trains people on the tools that he thinks that they'll be good for. So if I were to contact him tomorrow and say, hey, I want to start using an e-collar or a prong collar, before he says, okay, sure. He would be like, why? What made you do this? Because he knows me and he knows my relationship with my dogs. He knows, even though we don't live close to each other, he knows my dogs based on our conversations, what I've shared on social media. So he would really want to understand why I wanted to do this. And he's told me repeatedly that I would not feel comfortable with you using an e-collar or a prong collar because I think that you would feel so guilty about using them that it would impede your ability to use them correctly. and it would just be a horrible mess for you and the dog. So I do a martingale collar because that is my speed and it works great. And in fact, I just spent way too much money because, by the way, those collars are expensive. On 3 collars for Bella, and they're too thin. So she needs more wide collars like her brother. So now I get to go online and buy 3 more that are wider, and then I'll donate the ones that I got to someone else.
I was in line at Starbucks the other day in the drive-thru, and there was a big gray pit bull in the SUV in front of me that had a pink collar on. I was like, oh, we miss my Penny girl.
I know, with her pearls.
Yes. And then, oh my gosh, I had not had this happen yet. Starbucks, they have a lot of turnover at with their staff. So at one point in time, like, everybody at our local Starbucks knew Penny, but over like the past year or so, they've like for about like a year and a half, like everybody knew us. And then people started leaving, and the new crew doesn't seem to be as into dogs. They don't do their pup of the month thing anymore because Penny was Miss January 2021. So after losing Penny, I had never run into a situation where somebody was like, oh, where's Penny?
Mm-hmm.
And it happened the other day. And I guess this girl had been at college. And so she hadn't been there since last summer. And she's like, oh, Erin, she recognized me and I ordered when I was placing it. And then, she came up like, oh, don't have Penny today. And I'm like, oh, because it had never happened. And then I had to tell her that we lost Penny.
Don't you feel horrible?
I did. I felt horrible. And then she felt horrible because I was like getting choked out. And I said, I'm not upset at all. I'm happy anybody remembers her. And she's like, how could I not? She was so sweet. Like, I'm like, I know. That's what made me happy.
I remember when Scout, after he passed, and I started making food, and I started making it for 4 instead of 3. And it was just like, damn it.
Yeah.
Oh, it's like, it's the worst. But yeah, now, well, because of the blog, and basically all my friends are dog people and I see them all the time. So everyone knows. Yeah. I mean, it's just like, it is the worst. And what's the worst? All of it's horrible. But when you have friends, so one of my friends, her dog is getting old, and he probably won't, he may not be here by the end of the summer. And knowing that, and last year it was Dexter, who is a yellow lab, who I love Dexter so much, Dexter Morgan. And I would, oh my God, I love that dog so much. And when I found out that, he's there, we're going to let him go because it was just his quality of life wasn't there. Recently, Hank, who is a friend of mine's dog, again, he passed away one evening, and it was hard. They knew it was coming though. And it's just like when other people's dogs die. Loki is a red Doberman whom I loved, and whenever I went over for dinner, he would just put his head in my lap, and I would just pet his ears. They were so soft, and but it's just like, it's a lot of, when you have friends that are dog people, all these dogs their entire lives. So it's like another dog, Drake, he is, losing function in his back legs. And so I don't know how much longer he'll be with us. But the shocker, though, is my friends' dogs live a long time, and they are fed kibble. And so it's so funny to me. But they also get tons of exercise because they live on, I think, 15 acres. And so the dogs just roam all day long.
Oh, that's wonderful.
On the land. So it's just like they just have a good life. So, but yeah, it is. It's so hard.
I've had like 3 other friends who have lost dogs this year. And I'm just like, what is with 2023, man? It's been brutal.
I know. I mean, it's just like you get all choked up. I remember when Blue, he died 10 years ago. He was hit by a car, so it was completely sudden, and I was a wreck. My boss gave me bereavement days. I mean, because he was like, you're not going to have kids. And so he's like, this is your kid. And so it's like your kid died. So he gave me bereavement days and I was just a hot mess. And I remember I finally went into work on a Friday and someone came over to say they were sorry. And my boss wasn't able to get to them beforehand to like just say, because he was sort of like telling people, just leave her alone.
Right.
Because I was just like, no makeup, just like a mess. And the person came over and I just started bawling hysterically. I was just so horrible. And I felt so bad because he was just like, oh my God. And I'm like, I'm so sorry. I don't mean to do this. And oh my gosh, it's just so hard.
Yeah.
And it's just, it never gets easier. But, I look at Rodrigo because I don't know how much longer I'm going to have with him, but I'm just like blown away whenever I see him running across the yard or going over to hump Zoe. I'm like so happy.
I know.
He's like, he's still got it. He's still got that spunk. And then I yell at him, knock it off and leave her alone.
I know. I know that feeling of like, oh, look at him go.
I know. So, well, good chat.
Yes. Always a pleasure.
I'll talk to you next week then.
All right. Bye, guys.
See you later.